National purification to save the heart of a nation. Let burn a talking wood, bring a light to a talking wood. Natural law, just wisdom and love. Vision, truth below as a bird. Let burn a talking wood, let burn a talking wood.
Okay. Welcome everyone to our natural law presentation number 2. We will be talking about the fact that authority is an illusion and will always lead to slavery. That is principle number 2. So the questions that'll be answered is, what is natural law versus man's law? What is authority? What is slavery? And why authority is an illusion? And the second part of the presentation will be presented by Steve, my brother, and he will talk about building an exit from our current system. So he'll talk about our transition from moving as a society, as a whole, as a people, as a collective, from man's law to natural law. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first question is, what is natural law versus man's law? Natural law is the inherent, unchangeable, immutable law of the universe. It is based on knowledge, wisdom, and creating a state of harmony with the universe. So I can just kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about as far as natural law. So stealing from another person is wrong because it violates the inherent God-given rights of another person. So whether or not there's a local ordinance against stealing, because I think there's some places in the country now that have even decriminalized some type of theft. But does decriminalizing it and making it not illegal, does that make it not wrong? Of course not. It's still wrong. So natural law is based on the inherent God-given rights of every individual, not to have their property stolen, not to be injured by someone, have their physical well-being stolen or harmed. It is wrong simply because of, it is not wrong simply because of any man-made law or because you may be arrested. It is inherently wrong because it infringes on the rights, another's rights, and the violator will always be subject to the karmic consequences of the universe, no matter who you are or where you live. So no matter if you are a multi-billionaire, no matter if you're a government official, no matter if you're a homeless person, no matter who you are or where you live, if you're in the United States, if you're in Bosnia, if you're in Africa, doesn't matter. They're universal, natural law is. So it applies the same everywhere and to everyone. Now that's totally kind of the polar opposite of man's law. Man's law is based on moral relativism, dogma, and artificial social constructs that vary from place to place and time periods in history. So if you think about, slavery, once that was legal in the United States, but did that ever make it moral? Did that ever make it right? No. But that's the problem with man's law. It just varies based on whatever morals are convenient at the time. So another example of that would be jaywalking. It's considered wrong and illegal, but only because of the dogmatic beliefs, which are just the principles that are followed without question of our culture. So this jaywalking law can be changed at any time, and then a wrong suddenly becomes a right. It also may be perfectly legal or right, and that's in quotes for a reason, in another country. This is the inherent problem with man's law. If an action is truly wrong, it is always wrong, no matter what. There is no exception to the rule. Just because it's convenient for you, or just because the law says, oh, it's okay to do now. That is the problem with man's law. If something is wrong, it's always wrong. That is unchangeable. So this kind of goes more into man's law and why it's so problematic, because it's based on dogma and moral relativism. So what is dogma? Dogma is a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. So you cannot ever say it's untrue. That's what dogma is. What is moral relativism? It is the idea that there is no universal or absolute set of moral principles. Your morals can change depending on the situation or perceived consequences. And basically, that is how our society on a whole is set up. Dogma and moral relativism. So you can kind of look at the graph here where you have natural law on one side and man's law on the other side, and you can compare the two. So with natural law is based upon principles and truth, the truth that is inherent to creation. And we talked about truth in the first presentation. Truth is very simple. It is simply what is. Truth is just reality. It's just acknowledgement of reality. People try to make truth now into this complicated concept, and you can have your personal truth and I can have mine. No, truth is reality. Whatever reality is, that is the truth. So natural law is harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding. And it is universal. It exists and applies anywhere in the universe, regardless of location. Natural law is eternal and immutable. It exists and applies for as long as the universe exists, and it cannot be changed. So no matter how you fight it, no matter how you deny it, no matter how much you kick and scream, does not matter. Natural law will still always be in effect. So if you commit a wrong, yes, you will have that karmic, you will have the karmic repercussions of that always, because that is just how the universe works, and there's nothing you can do about that. So it makes much more sense to work in harmony with the universe rather than try to fight against something you can't fight against, because it is just what is. So that is in opposition to man's law, which is based, again, on dogmatic beliefs and constructs of the mind. It is complied with due to fear and punishment. Many people would not do the right thing if they were not subject to being thrown in jail or a fine. So it takes you away from acting in morality because it is the right thing to do. That, which is why you should act moral, not because someone's going to punish you or you're in fear. And man's law differs with location based upon, and it's also based upon the whim of legislators. So whatever is convenient for the government at the time, that's what the laws will be. When it's inconvenient, they'll change the laws to what's convenient for them. So how can that ever be moral? Because it's constantly changing just based on convenience or based on them being able to retain more power or whatever, they're up to at the current moment. So man's law changes with the times based on the whims of the legislators. Again, like I had brought up the example of slavery. How laws like that will change over time, but they were never moral to begin with. Just because something is part of man's law does not make it moral or immoral. We really have to get back to natural law, because then you will always be living in truth and you will always be living a moral life. And of course, no one's going to force you, so you can go against it, but then you suffer the consequences of natural law, which are the karmic consequences. And other people do have the right to defend with force their own rights. So if you come to harm me or steal from me, I have a right to defend my own rights with force. So that's how natural law would work. What is authority? Which is the real crux of what we really wanted to talk about today. Authority is the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. We give authority to many individuals around us, including police, military, government, and religious leaders. Our societal belief in authority directly leads to a state of unconscious following of orders without examining whether what we are doing is right or wrong. Authority leads to unchecked power and immorality. It leads to that without fail, because you are literally doing something without any investigation of whether it's moral, whether it's right, whether you're being lied to, anything. You're just simply, doing what you're told. Authority presumes one person can control another and take away their God-given rights and freedom. That's authority. You cannot have authority without that basic presumption. So if you don't think that another person should be able to walk into your house and control you, why do you think someone that lives in Washington, D.C. should be able to have the right to control you? Or someone that is on a military base should have the right to control you? No one should have the right to control you. That's the problem with authority. So this will always lead to the destruction of the human spirit. It will lead to immorality. It will lead to human slavery, and it will lead to societal degradation. What is slavery? Now, slavery is, like I said, the natural consequence of living in a state of authority and a state of man's law. So slavery is the condition in which one human being is owned and controlled by another. The condition of slavery can be more than just physical. It can be mental, emotional, and spiritual as well. A lot of people just only equate slavery with, say, when Black people in this country were slaves, and you were literally going to be beaten or killed or whipped, and you were often shackled and chained. So that's the only way they think of slavery. They don't think of slavery in terms of being a mental slave, emotional slave, a spiritual slave. But actually, those are more dangerous forms of slavery. These latter forms of slavery are even more detrimental and dangerous than physical slavery, because those who are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually enslaved usually have no idea that they are enslaved. So they're not even trying to free themselves. Some people even come to look forward to being a slave. They don't even, they're so conditioned to not have control of their lives and not make their own decisions and not have accountability for themselves. Some people have come to prefer the state of slavery. But they don't look at it as slavery. They just look at it as, well, this is just how it is. But they're not looking at why is it like this and should it actually be this way? So just because we are not in physical shackles does not mean we are not in a state of slavery. Think about how many things you are not free to do and have to do daily just to prevent being locked in a cage or becoming completely destitute and poor living on the street. That list will be endless. You'll probably never finish that list. That is literally the definition of slavery. So yes, we are in a state of slavery currently. How is slavery sustained? Mark Passio from whatonearthishappening.com. If you've checked out my website, you'll see a lot of information from him on there and links to his website. I highly recommend you check out his videos, his documentary, his podcast. If you watch the podcast, start from episode number 1 and go from there, so that you can really get the full scope of the vast amount of knowledge this man has. But Mark Passio details that the true solution to tyranny does not lie in creating anything new, but instead to morally educate the general population to such an extent that they cease and desist in conducting the immoral behaviors that allows human slavery to continue largely unchallenged. How is human slavery sustained? It's simple. Order followers. The order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver, because the order follower is the one who actually performed the action, and in taking such action brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. So they are the ones actually doing it. When people think of, the people that are pulling the strings, the small amount of people that are pulling the strings and manipulating society and controlling everyone, they're not even physically capable of doing these things. So without the order followers, they could not even do the things that they're doing. It would be impossible. There's no way they could enforce their immoral rules. They could not enforce this slavery that we're under right now without the order followers. So order following is the pathway to every form of evil and chaos in our world. It should never be seen as a virtue by anyone who considers themselves a moral human being. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single totalitarian regime that has ever existed upon the face of the earth. Just look at the current situation in Palestine. Do you think that genocide could take place without order followers? Impossible. Do you think the small group of probably relatively old and weak people that are, like I said, pulling the strings and controlling things and manipulating things could go over there and do what's being done? No. It's the order followers. Same with the Holocaust. It's the order follows. I mean, they literally got the whole country to go along with the Holocaust. They all were following orders, and people make every excuse in the world. Well, I need a paycheck. I need my pension. They forced me. They said I will go to jail. They said they will harm me. Doesn't matter. It is your responsibility to act morally. It is your responsibility to know the results of what you're doing. If someone says, go press that button over there, and you're not sure what's going to do, you better find out before you go press that button over there. That is your responsibility. You can't just say, well, they told me to. That is not an excuse to be immoral. That is not an excuse to infringe on other people's rights and harm them. The illusion of authority and control. Authority is an illusion of a diseased psyche based entirely in violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands, and others are slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the masters. Again, that is a quote from Mark Passio. And you see how authority leads automatically to slavery, because you have one person acting as a master saying, do this, do that. And then you have the people that are acting as slaves saying, yes, sir, I'm going to do it no matter what the consequences are, no matter what I'm doing to other people, just because you told me to. If you really sit back and think about that, that's sick. That is truly sick. But that is the state of the world we live in. No one has the right to control you. This is an illusion, because they do not really have authority over you. You are granting them authority over you. You are giving them this authority. We are doing this collectively every day as a society, really as a global, as the world, all over the globe. We are doing this, but we don't have to. We can stop this collectively anytime we choose. We can end our own slavery by collectively saying no. No is a lost word nowadays. People say yes to some of the craziest things. We have to bring back the word no. It's a lot of power in that word. So we can stop this by saying no and no longer participating in the current system. If everybody tomorrow said, we're not participating anymore, what could they do? Especially if the order followers said that. They could do nothing. They could do nothing to stop us from building the type of society that we want. So that's the end of my portion of the presentation. I just want to remind everybody to visit the website, affirmlifedaily.com. There's great information on there. There's tons of resources, everything from links to documentaries, videos, a list of books, even music artists that talk about these type of issues. So there's a ton of information on there, lots of ways to connect on social media. And just remember, natural law or God's law is the only way forward for humanity if we truly want to be free. So I will, if anyone has a question, I believe there's an option in there to like raise their hand and I can answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to just turn it over to Steve. Steve, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. Come on. All right. Okay. Can everybody see the slide for exit and build?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve. I'm Cindy's brother. And I just wanted to give a little intro on, what would it look like, or how we go about it if, we decide, as collectively or in small communities, however that would look, to move away from man's law into natural law. So that choice is going to require action to create something different, because we obviously wouldn't want to stay in the same type of society or civilization that we live in now. So basically, we're going to during this presentation, we're just going to address what our current model of civilization looks like and what an optimal civilization would look like. Okay, so a city is supposed to be the focal point for human development. Most of our cities don't actually perform that function. They're more of centers of control. If you congregate people in a small area, a lot of people, it's easier to control that. So it makes the police job easier. Any type of enforcement actions are much easier. When people are spread out in rural areas, it's a lot harder to enforce rules. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with living in a city or developing cities, but in our current civilization, they are not a focal point for human development anymore. But that's how that's what they were originally designed for. Okay, excuse me. So the current model rests on tribute, tithes, and thievery and government control. So, we pay taxes. Our government demands we pay taxes when they don't really even have that's not even a legal right that they do that, but they trick the public into thinking that they have to pay taxes. Well, unless you're talking about state taxes, of course. You've got religious donations going to people that are actually destroyed by the corrupt city designs. You've got bankers repossessing homes, cars. Those are possessions people work for, and then a banker or the state could just take it away anytime they want. That's obviously wrong. They poison air, water, food, and that's primarily to dumb down society so it can be easily controlled. So my question is this human development or is this human regression? And my answer would be definitely regression. It's definitely not human development. We are not moving forward as a society. We're moving backwards as rules get more stringent. They want more taxes. It's going to become intolerable at some point. So for me, moving away from man's law to natural law, it's inevitable. It's just how much pain is there going to be during that road. Okay, so an optimal civilization has 10 primary basics. So an optimal civilization should excel in these 10 primary basics: water, sanitation, food, shelter, power, heating and cooling, lighting, telecommunication, and transportation. So if you look at these things, how much of these things do the government control? To some degree, all of them. In most places, you can't get your own water. You have to rely on public works to supply water, which is controlled by the government. Same with sanitation. Food, you probably the easiest thing for you to control on your own if you chose to, but most people get food that's regulated how it's grown, and they're allowed to do things to it like make it GMO, use pesticides, and that's all sanctioned by the government, even though they know it's harmful to people. Shelter, I was a realtor for a short time. Buying a house is one of the most complicated things you can do, and that's all because of government control. But the big thing about shelter is how we build our houses. From my perspective, it's, we build in inefficient manners out of unsustainable materials, sometimes hazardous materials. The manufacturing process for most things in a house, you'd be surprised at how much pollution just manufacturing the raw materials for a house goes in, and there's like far better eco-friendly ways. I'll list a few there, like modern adobe, compressed earth. And I encourage anybody to look any of these methods out. Look up natural alkaline water. I've got to say one thing about water is the more you, handle or route water, the less optimal that water is for your health. So natural health sources where the water is barely treated or not treated at all, so it remains alkaline. The water maintains its structure. That's obviously that it has all those benefits when water is presented like that. To support the body, prevent acidic diseases, naturally repel pests. Food. I don't know how many of you on here are starting to grow food. I'm starting to grow food. I know my sister grows food, just to try to get away from store-bought GMO food is getting more and more difficult to get away from that. If you do find non-GMO organic food, it's usually at a much higher price, and I see just less availability of that. And sometimes I've found even that things labeled organic aren't truly organic. And for the other things, those are more technical in nature, but there are so many solutions that are buried, not disclosed for power, heating, and cooling. There's like geothermal cooling that doesn't use any electricity, that you could keep a house cool or cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Lighting, telecommunication, transportation. Those areas, that's what that's as a community on exiting, those are the things you figure out. And I'm sure, a community of smart people would be able to come up with much better solutions than we have currently. And it's already, the technology's there. It's just, we're not using it. We don't take advantage of it, or it's hidden. Just to list a couple of examples, the Venus Project, that's been around for a good number of years. That's in Florida, Venus, Florida. And, their mission is to design habitats in local ecosystems. So by that, I mean, it's self-sustaining. So everything that you would need to live on that compound that is there: food, water, power, everything. All those 10 things that we should be excelling in, that's what that is an example of, excelling in those 10 areas of a I don't know if you call it a city, it's just a community, but the city would follow the same design on a larger scale. The Venus Project's original goal was a resource-based economy, which is far superior to the fiat money economy that we have now. It's not really based on anything. And the resource-based economy would not use money. It would just basically, the community would manage the resources, so everybody's needs are taken care of, in an equitable, fair manner, like however that design would look. But it wouldn't be, based on how rich can I get, how much money, how many assets can I control, that kind of thing, which is basically what our economy is based on now. And Galt's Landing Freedom Farm, that's near Orlando, Florida. That's a newer place, only been around for I believe a year or two, and that's like a food farm or a food forest, and they have houses there, and it's just a community where the focus is just living free, prosperous, and abundant. So the goal there is to not depend on any external systems, from our current society, and just start over. So, and those are just two I know in Florida. I don't know if there's any in any other states, but I know some local areas, like maybe just something to start with, something small, like especially smaller towns, smaller cities that have community gardens. That's maybe something you can just get involved with, just to get your feet wet. Any of those technical areas, if you have expertise, different people have different expertise. They band together and, just start working towards building something outside of the current system. So it's going to, no one person is going to, be able to do all those things for themselves. That would be extremely difficult. So, we're not designed that way. We're designed to work together. Living on your own is a pretty harsh life. So I just encourage anybody to do research in any of those areas that make you self-sustaining, get us out of the current, just so we can get out of the current system. Believe that's the last slide. I don't know if anyone had any questions about anything.
Well, if no one has any questions, again, I just want to encourage everyone to visit the website to get more information and check out some of the resources. And like he said, it's really important that that we band together and that we continually educate ourselves. We've got ourselves into, a pretty bad situation, and it's going to take all of us committing to this to get out of it. So you can't wait for a hero. You can't wait for someone else. You can't ignore it and think it'll go away. As everyone can clearly see now, things are getting worse at a very rapid pace. So you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to do about that? So, but thank you for joining us. And again, the website is affirmlifedaily.com. And thank you so much.